right. Ask me anything. So what do you guys want to know? So today is the day that you can ask me anything. So I have a bunch of questions that folks have submitted through comments and emails and all that stuff. So we're going to get through those. But if you're here watching live and you have a question that you have not submitted yet, this is your chance to get on the action. All right. I would love to see who's watching. I see Devora. Hello, Devora.
Hello.
Let me know who else is.
You have a bumper to roll, dude.
Oh, yeah, that's true. All right. If you are here with me, especially if you're new to the community, but even if you're one of my OGs, please tell me in the comments, what is your coaching topic and where are you from? So tell me in the comments. And if you're watching the replay, give me a big old hashtag replay. And if you're watching this on YouTube, because yes, we do put these videos up on YouTube now, then make sure that you come back every single Thursday because we bring you fresh trainings. Today it's an Ask Me Anything, which is a little bit different from what we usually do, but I typically go into in-depth trainings on everything from how to be a better coach, to how to close more discovery calls, to how to get more discovery calls booked, and so on and so forth. So you don't want to miss out. You want to make sure you hit that subscribe button. All right, tell me now in the comments, where are you from and what is the topic of your coaching? Help people find you. Help people find you by saying what it is you do. If you do this on the regular, you will get into the habit of doing it. It's going to roll off your tongue. It's going to become muscle memory. That is good practice. So do it. All right. And if you have a question for me, if you'd like to know something about what it's like to run a 7-figure coaching company, to build a team, what's the difference between scaling and starting? My life's an open book. So hit me with your questions. And I see Devorah's in the comments here, and she submitted a question. So why don't we just start with your question, Devorah? All right. So she says, my discovery calls go really well. They are powerful and valuable. But when it comes to the end, I assume you mean, I have trouble closing. So this is very common. And honestly, without me actually walking you through and having you follow the process that we teach in our program, it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to give you anything more than very general advice or to take a very general guess at what could be happening. So there's a number of different things that happen. Typically, if you're saying they're very powerful and valuable, chances are you're doing too much problem solving on the call. And that can come from your energy around money, your energy around wanting to be loved, your fear of rejection, fear. If you've got any fear of rejection, fear of abandonment happening, then that can come up because what will happen is that you're like, I want to prove to you that I've got the goods. And so you're so busy proving it in a way that's not necessarily structured that you fill up. It's like giving a toddler a cupcake right before supper. They're going to be thrilled. They're going to thank you profusely. They're going to have cake all over their faces and they're going to be in seventh heaven. But are they going to eat supper? No, they're not. You just killed your sale, right? So oftentimes it is a sales process issue because you don't have a robust process and you don't need to be selling. I'm a big believer in showing and not telling, but most people don't know how to do that effectively. So just to break it down, what you want to be doing on your sales calls, what you want to be doing on your, whatever you want to call them, discovery calls, connection calls, clarity calls, whatever it is, you want to be doing, those are diagnostic calls. I think most people don't realize this or don't understand it properly. This is your opportunity to connect with your client and to really get to understand them, their unique situation, their struggles, their problems, the way that they've understood what's going on, the meaning that they're making of the challenges that they're facing, especially in the context of what it is you do. That is the purpose of this call. It is to diagnose the problem and not to solve it. Unfortunately, I see a lot of coaches going in and the second somebody asks a question, or even before they ask a question, they're like, oh, and you should do this and you should do that. And I tell my clients to do this and I do that. And now you've they're overwhelmed. Like they're scribbling notes like crazy. They're taking down everything. They've got a to-do list. They cannot make a decision anymore. They've got decision fatigue without ever being given what they're noticing and what they're familiar with and what they can describe, which are usually their symptoms, and what the root issue is. So it forces you to ask really deep questions. And what that does is it holds the space for them to come to their own truth. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to want to work with you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to want to work with them, because your job on that call, again, is clear diagnosis, which means sometimes people are going to come to you with a problem that you don't know how to solve. And in that case, you can help them by saying, hey, here's what I think your problem is. It is not the problem that I am best at solving. Here's a referral. You can send them to somebody else, or you can give them some free resources. But this way they're empowered because they now finally understand what the heck their problem actually is. And instead of looking for a whole bunch of squirrely solutions, they can go get the right kind of help. Does this make sense? So Deborah, I can all but guarantee that you are giving too much away and you are filling up their to-do lists, which is actually not doing them a service because it's overwhelming. They're going to get off that call grateful but overwhelmed, and they're going to become paralyzed into inaction. And it's costing you your sale, which sucks for you, but it's also costing them their results, which really sucks for them. So having a robust process where it's all mapped out, where you're genuinely helping them have epiphanies. We have an entire process that we teach in the program for this, because you want your clients to have epiphanies. If you can have them have a huge insight, you're basically rewiring their neural pathways. You're getting their synapses to follow. They're like, it's a weight off. They understand what the issue is now. They can stop the self-flagellation. They have a clear path to action, right? Now they can get the right help. That might be you, that might be someone else. But now you're in a position, now you get to decide, do you want to work with this person? And if so, then you can make them an offer. Does that make sense? Awesome. Now you might have some other issues with how you present the offer and how you close. So, I don't know. Again, we haven't coached together, so I don't know the specifics. But if we were to work together, what we would do is, first of all, I will teach you the process that we do. So right away in seeing the process, you're going to be like, oh, I never thought to do this part. I was doing this part in a different way. It didn't make sense. Then what we would do is oftentimes on our group calls, we'll role play and I will listen. So you might think you're following the process, but you might not be. And that's often the case when you have a subconscious pattern at play, right? If you have deep fear of rejection, if you have energy around money, you're going to get real squirrely. You're going to pussyfoot around the pricing. There's just going to be all kinds of stuff happening where you're not even aware that you're doing it, but it's obvious on the outside. So then my job is to first release that pattern, be like, all right, what's the story? What's actually happening here? Release the energy there, and then give you, okay, here's how you can frame it. You don't like saying it this way, no problem. Let's find a way that you do feel comfortable, that does feel authentic to you. So that's how we coach our clients through making this shift. Awesome.
Can you make a joke so I could use my my sound effect?
That's not how that works.
Oh, that's not how it works.
Yeah, that's the joke.
Maybe that could be the joke. Like, that's not how it works, and then and then you have to. Okay. I'll stop talking now.
Okay. Let's see. Where's Jackie? Jackie was supposed to send me a whole bunch of questions, and she's like, "I'm going to send you the questions," and she didn't send me the questions. So, Jackie, if you're watching this, send me the questions if you're in here. Meanwhile, I'm going to go to Kate's question. So Kate asks, how do you manage your time and work-life integration? How do you manage the various aspects of juggling a business with kids? Who's your support staff to make it happen? I love this question. So you've already kind of hinted at the answer in the question. Work and life, I never see it as like two separate entities. They're two pieces of There are two aspects of me, right? I flow between them, and it only works well if that flowing becomes easy. So there are a few things that I find are really helpful. One, I've talked about on my Instagram channel. If you don't already follow me, you should. I'm at Life with Geeta. So it's Life with Geeta, all one word, on Instagram. And one of the things I designed in my day was a 5-minute commute. So for those of you who are new, we have a very unique living situation. So the way it works is we have 2 side-by-side condos. We work in one, so one's our office space and the other's our living space, our home space. So I literally walk across, I don't even put on shoes. I just walk across the hallway and from one apartment to the other, and then I'm at my workspace. Now, the problem with that is that imagine you're in you're in testosterone, adrenaline, work mode, right? There's all the stuff that needs to be done and deadlines and fires to put out and all this other jazz. I find it a very different pace and energy. I love it, but it's different from my nurturing oxytocin, mom energy, wife energy. So I had a really hard time switching between like boss work, get shit done energy, and I've come back and I'm relaxing and I'm receiving and I'm nurturing and I'm cuddling. I had a really hard time switching between those two energies. So I designed a 5-minute commute, especially since my commute was literally 30 seconds. So if you work from home, which many of us do thanks to COVID, one of the best things you can do is have an alarm that rings, like, let's say your babysitter leaves or you have to be home at whatever time that is, or your kids need you at X time. That's your cutoff. So you have to have a schedule, same as you would if you left work, right? That's one of the things. So 5 minutes before that time, what I do is I have an alarm and then I'll sit and I'll put on headphones, or I'll just lie on the couch and I'll cuddle a cat, but I'll basically give my body and my mind time to just like slow the hamster wheel, right? Like otherwise my thoughts are just going at 1,000,000 miles a minute. And this allows me to slow down. I'll often use binaural beats like Brain FM, things like that, to kind of just like bring me back down to center. Then when I have come home to my body, then I go home. Because then when the kids come at me and they're like, and they want to tell me about their day, then I'm able to receive them. Otherwise, it just feels like I'm being attacked. I also feel like I want to fall down my phone. I feel like I need to constantly check in on my phone. And I had to break that habit because otherwise I couldn't make that transition. So I had to build a transition for myself. So that's one. Who's my support staff? So Pat, for sure. He's my support staff at work, and he is 100,000,000% my support staff. I'm like, I am so lucky. That's not actually a joke.
I had to use it.
You did have to use it. Yeah, seriously. He's such an amazing partner because he cooks, he cleans, he actually spends more time with the kids because as of COVID, we decided to homeschool full time. So we essentially job share. I like to joke that we're like Clark Kent and Superman. You never see us in the same room at the same time unless it's family time, right? So we've had to really adapt and make things work. Our work hours basically went down to half. Then I clawed back a little bit of my work time, and he had to work with like very little, very small slivers of work. We used to have weekends completely off, like no work whatsoever. We had to modify that to make our work-life integration work, given COVID and given homeschooling. So Pat is definitely very much my co-pilot. He takes on so much. We have conversations in the morning about, okay, what's for dinner? What's for lunch? So when we know what the plan is, then we can decide in the morning before stress hits what the deal is, and we can plan during the day. Whoever's with the kids can hit the grocery store if it's required, or however that works. Now, before COVID, we did have some help, and I will tell you this: when you're making money, friends, one of the first things you should get what your heart desires because this is about you. But what my heart desired more than anything, the thing that I spend the most money on is support. Always. It will always be that. More than anything else, the biggest line on my P&L is always people. And so we used to have somebody who grocery shopped and cooked for us. So my fridge was always like, for me, abundance is opening the fridge and it's full of really yummy, nutritious food that I didn't have to cook. It's the life. Now, as of COVID, obviously, we didn't have somebody coming home anymore. We tried a bunch of meal services. We weren't thrilled with those. So then we went back to some meal planning. We'll try. We have different things that we've been using. Like you could try a HelloFresh type box. You could also we have a bunch of really cool restaurants and stores in our neighborhood that do pre-prepared but uncooked food. So you can just kind of bring home a salad or a warm salad. So it's something that you saute and it's already made and it's super quick. And then that way that cuts down our work time, our prep time, I should say. Where I'm also super deliberate about scheduling family time. So when I'm in family mode, I don't check my phone as much as possible. I'm not perfect, but 80-20, like 80% of the time, I'm really good about this. And one of the ways I learned to be good about it is I was like, okay, it's that 5-minute commute. It's like, if I can give myself a break and I can arrive back in my body, then I'm not addicted. Like that I'm not trying to fuel myself by something else. Because I find otherwise it's like the adrenaline crash. Like when you're high on adrenaline and you suddenly crash, it's very tempting to kind of just go back to something that adrenalizes you, because otherwise you suddenly feel so much fatigue and it's exhausting, right? And then kids are like, mama. So I find that coming back into my body, and then connecting with my kids, having fun. I'll come up with something that I know I want to talk to them about. We have a ritual that says, when we sit down at the dinner table, we say, okay, guys, name somebody else at the table that really impressed you today. So we start the meal with compliments. So even, yes, our kids are not perfect. So they're just like, ew, there's baby corn in my food, gross. That still happens at our table. I'm sorry to report. It does happen. And we just try to ignore that and say, okay, well, who is somebody that you're impressed with? And then we lead the way and we, share things that we noticed about the other person that we really loved. That allows us to come home and be with each other. And I find that creating those little boxes where you're like, okay, when I'm at work, I'm at freaking work. And then when I'm at home, I'm at home, and not trying to be in 3 places at the same time, that really helps me protect my energy, because otherwise I cannot manage. So hopefully this answers your question a little bit, Kate. Okay. All right.
I have a question from Gabriel. If you saw it come,
Where did I did see a question from Gabriel, but where is it?
It's on your screen.
Where is it? Oh, there it is. Oh, what's your process for handling sales? Once again, what's your process for handling sales objections before they come up? Everything's my process for handling sales objections before they come up.
So continuum.
That's right, Gabe. Are we ready for this? I actually have multiple training videos on specific sales objections. So like I did one about the money objection. I believe I did one about the spouse objection. I've talked about how to approach, like how to present your pricing. So I've got in-depth trainings about that. Look for the media tab in the Facebook group, or, you can scroll my YouTube channel. They're all up there. In the program itself, we have specific short videos on how to handle every single common objection. But the best advice that I can give you is get crystal clear on who your ideal client is, which I know you are, Gabe. And then you want to figure out, okay, if they're close to that sweet spot, then what is it that your objections would be in that situation? Figure out your own objections. This is always my advice, because if you are sold, then the level of confidence and certainty that you're going to come to that call with, the way that you're going to radiate confidence, is going to give them the permission. It's going to build that bridge for them between their uncertainty and the certainty that they're moving into, right? What I always tell our clients is that you need to have enough confidence for 2 people. That's the deal. If you're that sold on your program, then it becomes much easier for somebody else to buy it too, right? Because then you're enveloping them in your confidence, and it feels good to be with somebody who really genuinely believes. A lot of people, when they're stuck, the most painful part about being stuck is that wobbly belief of, am I ever going to get out of this? Am I ever going to find nirvana? Am I ever going to get from pain to bliss, right? So that's what you want to be doing. The other thing that, just from a pure tactical standpoint, what you want to be doing is listing out. So again, get into that meditation place, actually make a list of every freaking objection that you would make in a situation like that. Write them all out. And then I want you to deal with your objections. Practice on yourself. You know me, I like to lead by example. So I'm like, great, I always have one person to coach. Always have one person to coach, which means I always get to practice my methods. I always get to test everything on me first before I ever bring it to anybody else, right? So if I have an objection, be like, all right, a framework that I've been using recently, especially with our mastery clients, is I call it PSA, right? So P is the pain. So it's like if you have something there's a story, it's like, I don't have enough money. That's a pain. Or I really wish I could afford this program, but finances are so tight, yada, yada, whatever that is. That's the pain. Or I never, any of those, like beliefs about yourself, those could be the pain. The S stands for the story. What is the story? What is the meaning that you've made from that pain? The meaning is, I will never be able to make the money back. If I spend this money, it's a risk. It's like, la, 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 la. There's all of these different meanings that you're assigning to it, all of these different stories that are associated with the pain. These are your go-to, so you don't see anything outside of that. It's a little bit like looking through your dashboard on your car and thinking that's the entire world. Like, what fits in your dashboard? This is it. This is all the universe has to offer.
What's the
Obviously, that's not true.
What's the A?
The A is
you said P is pain. Oh, no, it's S. PSA, sorry. S is
PSA.
For? What is S?
S is for story. P is for pain. S is for story. And A is for the alternate story. So I was getting to that. Imagine, so the story is your dashboard, right? Is your windscreen, I should say, your windscreen. So you're looking through your car windscreen and that's it. And you're like, wow, this is it. This is the only reality available to me. A is where you open your car door and you step outside the car. Now you can still see what you were seeing through the windscreen. It's not like you're denying it. It's still there, but there is so much more available. There's a much wider reality also in focus now, right? So the A is, what are the positive alternatives? Is the S, is the story that you've come up with the only truth, where there is absolutely no alternative at all? I guarantee you that's not the case. Guaranteed, right? Especially around fear or pain. That is not true, right? So what are some of the healthy alternatives that are available to you? So this can be a really great way for you to jujitsu your own resistance. The more you practice on yourself, the more you're going to be able to do it with other people, right? Because you know how to maneuver around that. You're no longer afraid of it. When it comes up, you don't contract. You don't start to become defensive around it, because that never works, right? Because then you're stuck convincing somebody. You never want to convince anybody. You want to invite them. So that's my advice. Hopefully, Gabe, that makes sense. Let me know if that makes sense to you. Okay. I have another question I have one from Tanisha, and then I'll come back because Kate had a bunch of different ones. Okay, yeah. Okay, so Tanisha asks, how do or did you network? I'm assuming the did is pre-COVID. I'm trying to be more visible in my local area. I have a brick and mortar Kung Fu school in addition to a coaching practice. I am especially looking to get small speaking gigs for visibility and practice. But so many networkers here network a ton or are involved in leadership. And I'm over here with no time trying to get through this period of growth so I can finally hire more help. How do people do all that? Do I need to? Or if I can get a few speaking gigs and have people see me that way, what do I do? So Tanisha, I will tell you this. I'm a very social creature, but I am not a networker. Like, I never made a practice of going out and like hobnobbing with the crowd. Like, that was just, it works. For people who love it, I think it's the right thing to do. So I'm tactic agnostic. I really am, like, different strokes for different folks. If it fills you with energy and joy and you love doing it and you're doing it because you enjoy the process of it. So if you never made a sale ever, if you never got another client from it and you just went because you freaking loved it, that's when it's the right thing for you. Because then you're just doing it and there's no pressure involved. That's how it should feel, right? But Tanisha, from what you've described, it sounds like it's like pulling teeth. You're like, oh, I will do it if I have to, but I will get through it. Like, you're white knuckling it. This is not the right fit for your personality. This is not the right fit for wherever you are energetically and time-wise. This is absolutely not the right fit. It would be so much smarter and so much easier for you to run some targeted Facebook ads, because Facebook ads geographic targeting is much more effective, is hyper effective, right? For the coaching, which might be global, it's a much more competitive market. But if you have a brick and mortar and you have a geographic area that you serve, I mean, that's what Facebook is actually really freaking good at, which nobody realizes. So that would be my preferred way of going about that if it were up to me. So that's my answer to that. And if you're saying, man, I don't have any money to run Facebook ads or whatever like that, sure. Just FYI, everybody, we don't have Facebook ads in our core program because what we teach you actually needs to precede Facebook ads, right? Because Facebook ad is the rocket fuel, or it's like putting your foot down on the accelerator, and messaging is the car. If you don't have a car, putting your foot on an accelerator doesn't take you anywhere. It takes you nowhere, right? It just takes you nowhere faster, in fact. All that ad spend just turns into nothing. So what you may not know, which I think most people don't realize, is that Facebook has a Facebook ads training available to everybody for free. Google it. Look in Facebook. Like it's a real thing. Facebook will teach you how to run Facebook ads on their platform, and you can start with fairly low dollar amounts. And that might be the way that you do this. If your messaging is dialed in, then this becomes an effective strategy. But if your messaging is all over the place, then yes, I would not mess with ad spend, because you might as well set fire to that money. Hopefully that answers that question. Kate asked another question. If anybody else has additional questions, please put them in the chat. In the comment section, I'll come back to them. Kate had another question. So she said, how do you balance learning? I love this question. How do you balance learning all the things with time spent on or in business and with parenting and with family? So I actually wrote a whole book about this, which is about to drop on May the 24th. And Kate, I don't know if you are up for it, but I'm looking for some advanced readers to read the book, which I will send you as a PDF. So I'll send you the ebook version for free. You have to promise that you're going to buy the paperback as well. It's going to be like $20 or $19.99 or something. And the reason for that is because I don't make a single penny off of this book. All of the money goes to Operation Underground Railroad. So I am going to shamelessly insist that even if I give you a free copy, please go buy one so that we can help end human trafficking, okay? But Kate and anybody else who's watching this, if you're interested in an advanced reading copy, wow, that's hard to say fast, then please let me know in the comments and tag Sarah Barre as well, because she'll get you on my list and I will make sure to send it out the second it comes back from the publisher, which should be very early next week. And the book's really short too. So you can read it. I'm a super duper slow reader and I finished it in less than 3 hours. So if you read at like normal pace, you're probably going to be 2 hours or under. There are some exercises in it. I talk in depth about my process of visualization, which actually leads to Kate's other question, which is, what was the energy that you used to manifest? It's all in there. And it's a ritual that takes literally less than 15 minutes a day. So I like to design, so I'm a recovering type A overachiever, right? What I used to do, and we talked about this on our group call today, is I would set these huge goals. And like you set BHAGs, right? Big, hairy, audacious goals. And then while you start the process of executing the big, hairy, audacious goal, you make it bigger because it's just not enough, because not enough is a core wound for overachievers, right? Yeah, you know who? Yeah. Okay. So then what happens is you go like this. You're like, wee, because you love starting things and you're like, oh my God, this time it's totally going to work and this is going to be amazing. And then you go right after, and then you feel like a complete failure and a fraud. Right? I've done this so many times. It is so exhausting. So now what I've learned to do, and especially what I've realized, is that can work when you're starting up. And it did work for me for certain parts, certain phases of my business, because it gave me, setting big goals gave me a lot of energy. So if you're one of those people that's motivated by big vision, like I can totally understand why you would do it. It's a good coping strategy because it actually fuels you with energy. Your purpose is huge. Therefore, you have a lot of juju to work with, and then you can go out and do great things. It's awesome. But when you're scaling, you're having to carry everything that you've built and then try to make the next leap with everything, holding onto everything that you've built. this method really just doesn't work for that phase. So like where we're at right now, where we're no longer starting up, we have a whole team that we're making the leap with. There's a huge amount of communication that's required for everything to run smoothly while we attempt to change everything, right? Because that's what scaling is essentially. This method doesn't work at all. In fact, now what I find works best. So again, decide where you are. I'm a huge believer in not cooking by somebody else's recipe. Be like, Geeta does this, therefore I'm going to do that. No, when in Geeta's journey did she do it? That's a very important piece of data. So what I find that now in our scaling phase, what works much better is setting lower, manageable, doable goals. And the other thing is, I also like now when I design for habits, when I'm trying to incorporate a new habit into my routine, if there's been a big shakeup, like what happened with COVID, if there's a change of seasons where things are shifting around and I have to like recommit. So I'm a big believer in the power of recommitment. Everyone's all about like, yeah, commit, you make the decision once and then you never have to make it again. Fuck, man, I can't do it. Like I wish I could do that. I really kind of wish I was that guy, but I'm just not. I find that I make and unmake my mind sometimes many times before I get anywhere meaningful, right? So what I've realized is my superpower is recommitment. So I will make the decision, I will commit to a process. Along the way, I will most likely fall off the wagon. I now assume that that's going to happen. What I do, though, is I don't beat myself up. I'm very careful about what meaning I assign to that. I've gotten very, very good with my self-talk on this one. And then what I'll do is I'm like, okay, I'm going to recommit and I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn from like what threw me off the wagon. Why was I compelled to jump off the wagon if I happened to have jumped? Because sometimes I do, right? So what was it? Like, what was the temptation? How can I remove it so that I never have to face the willpower battle inside again, right? How do I design my environment to support the behaviors? How do I create visual cues that, kind of cue me in the right behavior? Have you ever noticed when you're around your spouse and you're with your kids and you've agreed no phones, if your spouse picks up their phone, you automatically have this like super strong urge to go pick up yours? Have you ever noticed that? That's the power of a visual cue. So the good news is that works that's a negative example that I just gave you, but it also works in the positive. So one of the things I do is I will have my journal kind of open on the table, waiting for me when I wake up. So instead of running to my phone, I'll be like, oh, hi, journal, you're already open. And oh, look, a nice pen. So it kind of cues me to do the behavior that I want to do. So those are some of the tips that I would share with you around that. And it's super, super important to realize that what works for you during one phase of your life, business, marriage, parenting, might not work for you. You might really have to let go of the vine to jump to the next thing. So, okay. So Brienne says, yeah, Hinda's like, me, I don't know what you're talking about. I know. Brienne says, do you believe that a business can be started? Wait, let me see. Do you believe that a business can be started and grow successfully with ease and flow? In other words, without the hustle and grind culture? All models I see are folks who have hustled and pushed and are successful. And then they go, oh yeah, now I can be an ease and flow and not burn out and scale. And it's awesome. What a great question. I have noticed that also. Here's what I'll say. What you perceive as hustle may not feel like hustle to the person who's doing the work. I explain what I mean by that. When I look at our business, there have definitely been times when I have worked long hours. There have definitely been times when I have worked, I've done sprints where it's like, 2 weeks of, working some time on the weekend. We've never really taken like 14-day benders or whatever because we have children. So that's just not possible. You have to spend time with your children. And before COVID, we did 0 screens at our house. So there was no like getting rid of them, right? They're always there and you got to pay attention to them or they'll burn your house down. So so I remember at one point feeling a little bit resentful almost, where I was like, man, I was watching some of my younger male colleagues who didn't have kids, who were in a different phase of their life. I mean, they would get like an entire program built in a week or freaking 4 days because they were drinking Red Bull all night and then they just like recorded everything all in a stretch. And I was slightly envious. And then I was like, hey, wait a minute. I didn't even wake up to my purpose and feel this lit up until I was in labor. And when I was in labor, I was like, man, like, how am I so powerful? And I didn't know. So the very thing that makes you slow, that may feel like a weakness, or that may feel like it's not working in your favor, might actually be the superpower. I know that when the first iteration of this business tanked, which led me to create Impact with Influence, at that point I was like, man, like, this is all I have. Like, holy crap, this is going down the toilet. But because I was willing to pay attention to what was actually there, what was going on, what did work and what didn't, and this is the concept of discernment, which I also talk about in depth in the first book, How to Live Your Vision. I was able to discern. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because all too often, and Brianne, I realize I'm not speaking directly to exactly what you've asked. I'm going to in a second. But what tends to happen is when something stops working, we often think, oh man, I thought this was it. And like, now it's not. And then you throw the whole freaking thing out. And the problem with that is not only is it that you have to start from scratch, but you have to start from scratch with something that looks significantly different from what you threw out. You go through a few cycles of this, and there's not much that looks significantly different anymore. Now you're really effing confused, right? Because now you're like, man, all of these have some elements of the other things that I already threw out that I'm convinced don't work for me. So now what the fuck do I do? So there is that. But Brianne, what you're asking me is, do you have to hustle first? Do you have to hustle to get to some kind of velocity before you can cruise? That's what you're asking me. There's some element of truth to it. I won't lie to you. But I think it depends on what you define as hustle. If hustle to you means working long hours and burning out because you're not eating right or you're not sleeping enough or any of those things, then I would say, no, that's not true. I think you can absolutely do it a healthy way. But if hustle means you face all your inner demons and you're making yourself almost sick with anxiety because you're finally confronting your truth and you're pushing past the fear of what if I fail, then that hustle is 100% required. There is no shortcut through that piece of the hustle. Now, can you have tools that help you navigate that piece of the hustle better? I absolutely do believe that. Those are exactly what we put in our program. So will there be stress involved? Yes, there will probably be stress involved, truthfully. Can you have better tools to manage that stress and use it to your benefit? Absolutely. And if you can teach yourself discernment, you will short circuit and shorten that phase. And I said what looks like hustle on the outside may not feel like hustle on the inside. There are times when I've worked really, really hard, but I was really energized by the work. So someone looking at me from the outside might think, man, this girl works all the time. And I remember I had friends who kind of fell away from me because they would go out and they would have drinks and they would have girls' nights and all this other stuff. And I was like, no, man, I'm recording my thing. But I never once felt like I was missing out. I didn't feel like I was missing out. I didn't feel like I was sacrificing. I didn't feel like I was compromising. I felt lit up. So when I worked those long hours, I did it because I was fueled by the passion of what I was doing. I was excited for it. I wasn't like, oh God, I have to go get the thing done. Like that's not how it felt. There were times when I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to, like, how could I possibly? And there were times when I would go out for runs and I would be like, the only way I will fail is if I freak out. All I have to do is not freak out. Like I would repeat this to myself like a mantra over and over and over and over. That was the hustle. It wasn't Red Bull. It wasn't long hours. It wasn't lack of nutrition. It wasn't any of those things. So hopefully that answers your question. Does this help?
Yeah,
it's a long reply.
There's a comment from her on the screen right now. From Brianna.
Oh, I love it. She says, fabulous, comprehensive reply. Yes, being in alignment is energizing. Yes, exactly. So if you know how to fuel yourself, then you have a lot more hustle in you. And that's when people can't keep up because they're like, frick, are you so disciplined? And truthfully, like people always say that to me, like, how are you so disciplined? I'm like, I don't feel like I'm very disciplined at all. I'm crap at doing things I don't want to do. I'm really good at doing things that I want to do. Is that discipline? I don't think so. But I'm just really good at figuring out how to how to monetize the things that I like. I'm good at that. So that's kind of what's been helpful. Do we have any other questions? Let me see. Oh yeah, I have two more questions here, in fact. Let's see. I said, it says, okay, so organic versus ads to get clients. I've kind of spoken to this before. So this is from Sylvain Haché. He says, the group engagement thing seems to have taken a beating lately. Thank you. So here's the thing. Whatever's working for you right now, it ain't going to work forever. It just is the nature of the beast. And if it's on Facebook, it's definitely not going to work forever. In fact, it is probably only going to work long enough for you to feel like you finally got it, and then it's going to tank. That's how it works on Facebook, at least, right? The algorithm's constantly changing. Ad rules are changing. The freaking pixel is changing. The laws of privacy are changing. Like, it's all the changes. And if it's not any of those things, then it'll be Boxing Day week or a crazy election where everybody's pouring billions of dollars into Facebook and the algorithm loses its mind. So ultimately, what can you count on? You can count on a depth of clarity. So when you're crystal clear who you are, who you serve, and exactly how you serve them, in other words, what's your offer, and you can communicate that really clearly, then quite frankly, everything works better. Everything works. So if Facebook is underperforming, Sylvain, especially for what you do, you could jump onto LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is kind of like where Facebook was 7 years ago. So the party is just starting. Here in Facebook, like, people are drunk, they're trashing the place. You just never know what you're going to get. LinkedIn, the party's still starting. There's jazz, it still smells fresh. There's punch in the punch bowl still. Like, so it just depends. Clubhouse is like that. It's brand spanking new. And this isn't so much me saying, oh, you should be on those platforms necessarily. It depends on where your audience plays. It depends on what you're comfortable with. It depends on a bunch of different factors. But if you have the clarity of knowing exactly who your client is and how you serve them, then these decisions will become a lot easier. And you should always have some organic. Always, always, always. Because again, your ad spend is your ad performance is gonna do this. Like, we have crazy, amazing ROAS, like return on ad spend, and have done historically. But despite our historic, amazing ROAS, we've taken deep dives. Like, there are times when suddenly things that were working like gangbusters will suddenly tank for a period of time, and then we have to build them back up. So that's always gonna happen. If you don't have some organic to flatten that curve, it's a bit of a roller coaster. And I've been on it, so I get it. But organic is the thing that is the base, the foundation on which all your ad spend works. So you have to build organic first. That's my philosophy. That's what we teach in the program. Okay, let's see. I had one more question, I think. No, I think that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, it was Kate Molyneux who said, what feelings did you feel to manifest the work-life integration? So one of the things that I do, again, this is in the book, is I have this practice that I do in the mornings where I write down what I want, right? So I just say, I want, it could be anything. It could be, I want a burrito for breakfast, right? It could be something very banal and small and silly, or it could be, I want to be on vacation in Hawaii by myself with nobody around me. It could be that. Like, it could be anything at all. I want to be best friends with Sarah Blakely. I want to be like whatever. It could be anything you want. Now, the real magic of this, is what happens next. So what I do is I write out. So the commitment is just one a day, but I'll often write, 15, just depending on the day. Sometimes I'll write 3, sometimes I'll write 15. The commitment is 1. As long as I write 1, I've kept my deal with myself and I am good. I'm solid, right? What I do is I say, I want this because because it makes me feel. So I'll say whatever it is I want, and then I say, because it makes me feel. And then I think about what is the emotion. So that's obviously like the emotion that I want to feel, the feeling, or the physical sensation that I want to experience. So sometimes it's like, I want to feel light. I want to feel vibrant. I want to feel, so oftentimes it's like, so you figure out what the feeling is. It's either an emotion or a sensation or both. What this does as you practice it day after day after day after day is you start to get very freaking clear about your actual motivation, what you actually want, not the box that it comes in, but what's inside. Now, what's cool about this is that if you know what you want, so for me, the thing that often comes up is support, right? That feeling of being supported, of being part of a tribe, part of a clan, part of a team. I love that feeling, right? So I'll often have because it's long to write, because it makes me feel, what I will do now, since I've been doing this for years now, is I will write, I want to find the perfect social media person, for example. And then in brackets, I'll write support. And usually another feeling that I experience this as a physical sensation is expansion, because I want expansion. The more I can hand off, the more my energy is freed up to expand the vision, to expand, to step more fully into my zone of genius. Right. And this is a constant process of pruning. What's your zone of genius today might only be your zone of excellence next year. Next year, your zone of genius will have deepened into something even bigger. I was not an author December 31st last year. Now I'm an author, right? So this is a new capability I've built. This has become more of my zone of genius, which means in order to open up space for this, I have to get rid of certain other things that I used to be, that I am really good at, but that I'm no longer as energized by. So what I look for is like, okay, so what are the feelings that I most want to feel? And then I start to look for, how do I feel those feelings? If I know that support is that feeling of being supported, which for me is like both an emotion and a physical sensation, I look for examples in my day. Then I work on, and this is the thing that I do at the end of my days. I'm like, what support did I receive today? If I'm telling the universe, I want more support, I want more expansion, I want more love, I want more self-trust. These are the things that very often come up in my journal. Then at the end of the day, I will also do an inventory to be like, I'm sure the universe sent me 50 million opportunities to experience all these things. How many was I able and willing to receive, though? That's the real question, because that's the piece that I control. So then I start looking for what are the examples of support that I noticed. And you will be, I don't know if you'll be shocked, but I am always shocked by how much I received that I didn't always make the time to notice during the day at the moment that I received, or it helps me relive that feeling of being supported, being loved, expanding, whatever that is. It allows me to feel deeply in control and connected to my purpose, the way I want to feel. And what that does, I truly believe, is it buys me time. It helps me be patient. I am not by nature a patient person. Ask Pat. I'm not a patient person. I'm a very driven person, right? But the problem with being that driven is you do this, like you're like, yippee, I'm gonna do all the things, and then you hit a wall because shit happens and nothing goes according to plan. Doing it this way and really allowing myself to receive what I want on the daily basis, even when it shows up in ways that I don't expect, buys me endurance. It gives me the space to be in the game long enough for it to turn into something big. Does this make sense? Hopefully this makes sense. Yeah, you don't just contemplate. You really look at, like, first your job is to want what you want and be clear about it. Most of us are not. I will tell you this, if I asked you to write down 50 things that you want, I promise you will struggle. I know, you think you won't. Try it, see if I'm wrong. Write me 50 things that you want. And then assign, after you do the 50, assign the feeling or the sensation you want to have with it. But even writing down 50 things you want is going to be challenging, because we all carry them around in our brains all the time and feel in lack. But when we sit down to acknowledge them, they disappear, they melt, they hide. So getting in touch with what you actually want, learning what it's actually about for you personally, and then learning to receive it as a practice that you notice, that you celebrate at the end of your day. That's the way that I know to change, to start living my vision. Like whatever, like if I want to own an island in Hawaii one day, then I can start feeling those feelings today in a very, like, just by like standing on my balcony and feeling the wind in my hair. Like, it just doesn't matter. I can find all these different ways to create the same sensations and emotions in my body today. And that's what's going to fuel me. The purpose then fuels the journey. And I love that, because that's alignment to me. Hopefully this makes sense. I think that pretty much brings us to the end of this Q&A. Thanks for spending your time with me. If you want to explore what it's like to work with us and learn to live like this for yourself, use the link on your screen, and I will see you all next Thursday.